Okay, F-3, communicating with stakeholders. This boils down to, when in doubt, refer the stakeholder to your supervisor. Now, when we talk about stakeholder, we're talking about anybody who is invested in the case, anybody who is concerned with the outcome of the case and who's going to benefit from the outcome of the case. So that's family, caregivers, other professionals, teachers, okay? The list goes on. Anybody involved in the life of the client who has some sort of stake in that client, some sort of investment, is considered a stakeholder, okay? So when in doubt, when you're talking to a stakeholder, whoever it may be, and you're not sure if you should be answering that question, if you even know the answer, always refer out to your supervisor, okay? Supervisors are ultimately responsible for the case. So what happens on the case is really in the supervisor's hands, okay? It's a team effort. Everybody works, okay, to improve the lives of our clients, but ultimately the person responsible is going to be your supervisor, okay? Because your supervisor is responsible for what you're doing on the case, okay? Whatever happens on that case is they're responsible for. So anything you say, okay, whether it be treatment related or health related or whatever it is, okay, reflects back on the supervisor. Remember, the RBT's role is implementation, okay? The primary role is implementation. RBT should not suggest changes or advise stakeholders on matters regarding the treatment plan, okay? So anything about the behavior plans and the treatment plans and things like that should be referred out to your supervisor, okay? And this isn't because supervisors don't trust RBTs, okay? It's not because RBTs don't know how to answer these questions, okay? It's because we're just protecting everybody involved. That's ultimately what it comes down to, okay? Ultimately, it's about qualification. It's about what the BACB board says, okay? And they say these type of questions, okay, need to be referred to your supervisor. So let's look at a practice question. RBTs should communicate only as authorized with stakeholders. RBTs should refer all other matters to the supervisor. Which answer choice represents something that the RBT should refer to the supervisor? So what is the question asking? Yeah, the question is asking, which of the following situations represents a situation where you would refer out to the supervisor? Okay, so put yourself in the shoes of this RBT who is in these scenarios being asked questions. When would you answer the question and when would you refer to a supervisor? A question from parents about diets. This, as you might imagine, is very common, okay? There's a lot of stuff out there about different diets, their effect on autism, keto diets and low carb diets, the list goes on. So if you're asked about diets, should you answer your opinion or should you refer out? Well, this is a situation where you should refer out, okay? We're not looking for opinions in these situations. We're looking for evidence, right? Empirical research, all right? So if a question comes up about a diet because they watched a Netflix documentary or they read something online on Facebook, right? You need to refer out to your supervisor. Okay, so A is it. What about B? A question from the speech therapist about interventions. Okay, so this is another professional still involved, right, in the case, and they ask you about some of the interventions. What should you do? Well, you might be familiar with the interventions, okay, but who should you refer to? You should still refer out to your supervisor, okay? Let your supervisor know the speech therapist, the occupational therapist was asking about the treatment and they wanted to get more information, okay? Put them in touch. There you go. So B is also a situation where you should refer to a supervisor. And then finally C, a question from the teacher about the behavior plan, okay? So this is again, a question specifically about intervention, about behavior plan, about treatment plan. Anytime there's a question about those, okay, refer out to the supervisor. Now, if you're there and the supervisor's there with you, okay, supervisor might give you a little more leeway because they're there in case they need to jump in. But if you're just alone, okay, always go to your supervisor, ask them what the next step is, okay, and then go from there. So which answer choice represents something that the RBT should refer? Well, that is D, all of the above. All of these situations are times where you should refer the stakeholder out to the supervisor. Okay, continuing. Again, when in doubt, refer the stakeholder to your supervisor. There are many situations where the RBT should refer the stakeholder to a supervisor. So this is a list of situations where you would refer out, but it's not a comprehensive list. Okay, remember, when in doubt, refer out. Okay, so questions about diet or health. That's medications, diets, okay, doctor visits, status of the disability. I mean, any of these questions need to go to the supervisor. And when a supervisor, a BCBA, gets a question about the health and the medicine, that supervisor should refer out to a physician, right? An MD. Okay. Remember, everybody has an expertise, everybody has a role, and we want those people to play those roles. Okay. We don't want to take on more than we're qualified for. Right. So everybody has to refer out eventually. Okay. Questions about treatment plans, behavior plans, skill acquisition plans. Basic questions. Okay. A little different, right? If they're just asking you a very basic question about the plan. Okay. But if they're asking you about changes or suggestions, those should always go to the supervisor. Okay. They're the ones responsible for creating and writing these plans. The RBT then implements the plans. Questions about academics or schooling. So if they're asking about grade level, academic level, IEPs, when they should go to school, do you think school is the right option? The list goes on, especially now living in times of COVID. Questions about academics and schooling are much more frequent, much more prevalent. So we always want to refer, again, those to the supervisor, who will then hopefully get consultation or reach out to a teacher or somebody with knowledge about academics or schooling. And then questions about outside services and therapies. So if they ask you, hey, what do you think about speech? What do you think about OT? You should always, again, refer these type of questions to stakeholders. I sound like a broken record. I'm just trying to reiterate the importance of these questions, okay? Because a lot of times these questions are the make or break questions on the exam. When you need a 200 on the exam and you get a 195, 193, more often than not, you miss a couple of these, okay, and it sets you back. So people neglect these because they're not as fun and as fancy and as flashy, but they're still count for as many points as the other questions. They're just as important, okay? So it's imperative that you know these items. Question, you are working at home with your client. You're using a DRA to teach a replacement behavior. Client's mom asks you what skills you're working on. Which of the following is the best response? Okay, so what should you do? It's a very simple question, like what skills are you working on? Okay. Do you need to refer to parents or a supervisor in the situation? Well, no, they just want to know what you're working on that day. So if you're working on writing and functional communication and a gross motor skill, then simply tell them that. Okay. You're not making suggestions. You're not giving opinions. You're not changing the treatment plan. You're just telling them what you're working on, which is perfectly acceptable. Okay. So A is not correct. What about B? Explain to the parent the skills you're working on. Yeah, right. That's what we just said. Okay. It's okay to explain what you're working on in this situation. You're not giving advice. You're not giving changes. You're just telling them what you're doing. Totally fine. So B is our best answer. But what do we do on the exam? We always read all the answer choices. So C, train the parents on the intervention you're using. No, right? We don't. RBTs do not solo train. They might assist in training, but RBTs do not train independently. So C is out. And then D, inform the parent that RBTs are not allowed to answer questions about treatment. This is true, okay? And this is an okay answer, but they're not asking you about the treatment specifically. They're just asking you what you're doing. What are you working on? And remember, as an RBT, you still want to maintain a good relationship and rapport with the client. So explaining or telling them what you're working on, totally fine. Once you start talking about the treatment and what you would be doing or your opinion or your suggestions, okay, then we need to start referring to a supervisor, okay? But in this situation, explaining to the parent the skills you're working on is totally fine. So that's F3, okay? Not too difficult, pretty common sense, right? When in doubt, refer out, okay? That's what you need to know. As always, if you need our practice materials, check out rbtexamreview.com or our shop. We have 2 practice exams, a RBT Exam Task List Study Guide. Combo pack comes with everything with flashcards, and then a Competency Study Guide. Check all those out. Please like and subscribe if these are helpful. That supports me, and I appreciate it. Any questions, email me, leave a comment below. Other than that, I'll do a Sunday shout out. So if you pass, let me know. And then we'll be back next week. So I'll see you soon.